Well, I didn't have any differences with him on his strategies, except for one thing, and that is I did not believe in peaceful nonviolence. I felt that you had the right of self-defense, and if you were attacked, the Constitution gave you the right to counterattack. So I could never accept the philosophy of letting your enemies kick you around, spit on you, and do all the other things.
Because you're a law fighter too, right? In that regard, question of defense.
I think.
I'm just thinking of just your own personal life, going right back to.
Well, I think I had two approaches to it. First, my inner instincts are not to start a fight, but if anybody wants to fight, make sure they get all that they are seeking in the way of a worthy opponent. And the other part of it is I have considered very carefully the legal implications, and it does seem to me that self-defense is such an important part of our legal heritage that you cannot give that up lightly. And I sometimes fear that some of the violent reaction of our young people in this country came about because after having been subjected to the humiliations of conduct which follows nonviolent guidelines, there was a rebellion within them that caused them to come out much more militantly than they would have if they hadn't been subjected to some of those terrible insults. In addition, of course, I think we have to take into consideration that perhaps if the nonviolent approach had not been used in some of the southern communities, a great many people would have been killed. And to the extent that it was a matter of saving lives, I could see that it would make sense. But as a philosophy, I just could never accept it as one that I would want to live by. I could certainly respect Dr. King's views, but I just didn't want to have that as my own way of life.
And yet, King's approach did arouse a certain amount of compassion, don't you think?
There is no doubt that the sympathies of the country were with those who were the victims. And I think there was greater sympathy for blacks when somebody would be on a television screen being dragged down the courthouse steps because he tried to get served a meal, and his head bumping on every step, as I saw on one television program. Or people being routed with fire hoses and dogs biting at them and that kind of thing. I think there's no doubt this evoked a tremendous amount of sympathy in the country. And it may well be that we wouldn't have had that kind of sympathy if those same people had been shown shooting those dogs and counterattacking those who had the fire hoses, or jumping up on the courthouse steps and having a fight with the policemen who were trying to drag them down. It might have been that we would have had less sympathy. So it's a matter of your own personal philosophy.
Yes, I was just about to say, from your own point of view, you still just could not see yourself being subjected to something like that.
Well, no, I never could. I always had to at least assert my
powers of self-defense.
That is correct.
The question of differences of philosophy here is very interesting. to the extent that, or for example, you use the moral argument very powerfully in your approach to legislation. Martin Luther King used it also very powerfully in his own approach. There are elements of or areas or differences in tactics. You would not expose yourself to violence. King felt that that was good. It aroused that type of sympathy. Discuss some more, just the whole question of moral approach to legislation, to the civil rights movement, the moral approach. Because my reason for dwelling on this point now is that I think there is an attempt, or there has been an attempt in recent years to more or less move away from the moral approach in civil rights. Just how strongly did you feel moralism really worked to your benefit?
Well, I think that in the world of political action, there were many people who had high moral principles, but those principles were never activated if it was a political disadvantage.